The story begins in an extremely cold region of America, a completely desolate, snow-covered landscape. It's the middle of winter, so the entire area is blanketed in snow. A young girl is stumbling and running. She's gasping for breath. Terror fills her eyes. For a brief moment, she considers stopping, but then she forces herself to keep going. She has to keep running. The next day, we see Hawkeye, meaning Corey Lambert. He's a hunter whose eyes land on a pack of wolves. With a perfectly placed shot, he takes down one of them, after which the rest immediately scatter. Today, Corey had promised to spend the entire day with his son. The moment he called out to Casey, the boy showed up already fully prepared, with a rifle slung over his shoulder. After that, Corey took his son to his grandparents' house. He told his boy to just wait here for a little while. He'd go check around the area and come back. Everything's fine, right? The truth is, Corey had come here for work. His father-in-law had given him a location where a calf had gone missing. They suspected there was a mountain lion in the area that could be a threat to their sheep, goats, and cattle. That's why they had called Corey. But when Corey set out to track that mountain lion, all he found were footprints, and these didn't belong to any lion. Soon, while following those tracks, he came across bloodstains on the snow. He pulled out some specialized clothing from his bag, took his pistol in hand, and carefully began following the trail. This was the same path that girl had taken while running. Her footprints hadn't been covered by snow yet. A little further ahead, the tracks changed, as if someone had been walking with extreme difficulty. Corey kept slowly following the blood trail. A short distance later, he found the girl. She was lying completely still. Her feet were bare, her body frozen solid. Blood and ice had formed around her mouth. Corey immediately called for emergency help. The FBI was going to take time getting there because the roads were in terrible shape and snowfall was happening everywhere. The tribal police chief, Ben, said not to move the body until the FBI officer arrived and examined the site. But Corey grew restless. He pointed out that the snowfall was intensifying and that all the tracks showing where the girl had run from and where she was coming from would soon vanish completely. He asked Ben for permission to investigate on his own, but Ben refused. Corey recognized the girl. This body belonged to Natalie, but Ben insisted they would only confirm her identity after a proper examination. A short while later, a vehicle arrived at the scene. Corey walked over to it and found a girl sitting in the driver's seat who introduced herself as Jane Banner. She had come here alone and was absolutely not prepared for the cold. She was wearing light clothing. At this rate, she'd freeze. She explained that she had been pulled out of training and sent here. An FBI agent arriving in a rental van like this struck Ben as very odd. Casey's grandmother gave Jane some clothes to wear. These clothes actually belonged to her granddaughter. She wasn't particularly happy about handing them over to Jane. When Jane stepped outside wearing them, Corey froze for a moment at the sight. Old memories of his daughter began haunting him. By this point, we understood at least this much. His daughter was probably no longer in this world. What exactly happened? We didn't know yet. Anyway, after that, Corey told Casey he'd be back in a few hours. The blizzard had stopped, and it was time to head back to the site. Corey and Jane went there together. Tribal Police Chief Ben arrived on a separate snowmobile. The tribal police had already secured the site. The storm had passed, but it could return at any moment. Ben and Corey were still arguing. Corey kept insisting that he knew this girl. It was Natalie. Jane conducted a close-up inspection of the body and said calling in forensics was absolutely necessary. Corey mentioned that the girl's home was nearby, yet no one had filed a missing person report. The strangest part was, if this girl was from this very area, why had she gone out barefoot? Jane asked Corey what he thought about the situation. Studying the tracks, Corey explained that the poor girl had been running through the snow for who knows how long, and then finally collapsed here from exhaustion. The freezing air entering her lungs caused a pulmonary hemorrhage, which killed her. Jane asked Corey if he would help with the investigation. Corey was a hunter, but his skills could prove useful here. Corey agreed, saying there isn't much difference between animals and humans. He could track down anyone. Later, we see Corey preparing bullets late into the night. That's when Casey came to him. He had heard about Natalie. All he asked was, is all of that happening again? Even though he wanted to, Corey couldn't bring himself to deny it to his son. The next day, Jane learned that no missing report had been filed because Natalie no longer lived with her parents. The moment she turned 18, she had started living with her boyfriend. The medical examiner revealed that Natalie had been assaulted before her death. However, he couldn't determine whether the attacker was one person or multiple. There were also several cuts on her body. The cause of death was exactly what Corey had said: pulmonary hemorrhage. Considering all the evidence, the examiner declared the case a murder. Now they needed to figure out where this girl had been running from, but they had no evidence whatsoever. Jane said in frustration that if she sent this report to her boss, he would recall her, meaning there would be no more government assistance. so they quickly began interrogations to find evidence. First, they spoke with Natalie's father. He got irritated by Jane's questions. He told them his daughter lived with her boyfriend and had never even introduced him to them. They knew nothing about her personal life. Natalie's mother was in the bedroom. Ben signaled to Jane not to bother these people right now. They were distraught, but Jane went inside the room anyway. Inside, she saw Natalie's mother just weeping. Her back was completely hunched over. She sat in total silence. After that, Corey arrived. The moment Natalie's father saw Corey, he showed no anger at all. Between the two of them existed a kind of pain that needed no words to understand. They embraced each other. Corey said softly that holding on to the pain sometimes feels easier. But after losing his own daughter, he learned one thing. We should only remember the love they gave us, not the agony of losing them. Then Martin shared that he personally didn't know anything, but he had a good-for-nothing son who had gotten mixed up with drugs. He hung around with some guys, the little feather boys. Regardless of how he was, Natalie loved her brother deeply. He might be able to tell them something. After this, Ben, Jane, and Corey went to the Little Feather Boys area. The moment they arrived, loud music was blasting inside. Ben mentioned there were 4 brothers in total, and none of them were the cooperative type, each one worse than the last. Corey went around to the back of the house while Ben and Jane went to the front door. A guy named Sam opened the door. It was obvious he was heavily intoxicated. He said slowly that his other brother was in jail, and Chip, Natalie's brother, wasn't home. Then, without warning, he sprayed pepper spray right at Ben and Jane. Both their eyes burned intensely and their vision went blurry, but Corey calmly picked up a shovel and smacked the guy with it. The second one stumbled and collapsed on his own. Now Jane, with her gun drawn, went inside. Her eyes were still burning. She couldn't see clearly. The moment she reached a corner, Sam immediately opened fire at her. Jane quickly fired back, shot after shot in rapid succession. Sam fell and started coughing violently. Jane knocked his weapon away with her hand and held him at gunpoint. Then Ben came inside. He saw Sam's condition and said they should get out of there. Jane suggested calling an ambulance. Maybe he could be saved, but right at that moment, Sam took his last breath. Ben walked straight outside. Jane followed. Outside, Frank and Chip had already been apprehended. Jane started questioning them, but the moment Chip found out his sister was dead, he completely broke down. Then an important detail surfaced. He knew who Natalie's boyfriend was. Jane said Chip could take them to the boyfriend, but Corey stopped her. He had noticed fresh vehicle tracks in the snow. He examined all those tracks carefully through his binoculars. These tracks were heading toward the same mountain where Natalie's body had been found. One thing was very strange. The tracks went upward, but never came back down. Corey instantly understood that Chip knew something. He told Jane that the snow had preserved Natalie's story, and they needed to hurry, because if a heavy storm hit, everything would be wiped clean. Reaching the ridge, Corey shut off the engine. Their snowmobiles couldn't go any further through these trees. Everyone continued on foot, but they didn't have to walk far. The track stopped at one spot. Another dead body was found there, half buried in snow, pecked apart by birds with blood all over it. By evening, the entire area was swarming with police. Ben said they would pull the camera recordings from the place where Natalie's boyfriend worked. But the boys in their custody remained completely silent. No one said a word. At this point, Corey asked if he could talk to them. Ben explained that even if they confessed in front of him, it couldn't be used as a confession in court. The presence of an officer is required. But Ben added that if something else came out of it instead of a confession, that could help. Jane stepped aside for a phone call. Then Corey went back to Ben, saying he'd known this boy since childhood. Maybe he'd open up to him. Reluctantly, Ben let Corey go. When Corey reached Chip, the boy said this whole town was useless. What kind of life was this? But then Corey grabbed him and shook him, saying his sister's killers were still walking around freely in the very town where he was born. Was he just going to let them roam? He seized Chip by the throat and shoved him hard against the vehicle, telling him that those savages had torn his sister apart. Have some shame. Corey turned to walk away. But hearing all this, Chip broke down. He revealed everything. Natalie's boyfriend was Matt. He worked as a security guard at a drilling rig. But if anyone might know even more, it was Sam. Ask him. But Sam was already dead. Corey went back to Chief Ben and Jane. Jane wanted to know what Chip had said, but she didn't ask directly. Ben suggested they meet at the rig in the morning, but Corey left without giving a straight answer. Soon, the body found earlier was identified. It was indeed Natalie's boyfriend, Matt. He was a security staff member at the drilling station. When Jane went to Corey's house to share this news, he invited her inside so she could escape the cold. Jane came in, and while Corey went to get water, her eyes fell on the family photos. When Corey returned, he pointed at one of the photos and said his daughter's name was Emily. Hearing this, Jane expressed her sorrow. Then Corey shared the painful story of what had happened to his daughter, Emily. Back then, Corey was working in another city. That day, he had gone on a short trip with his wife, Wilma. At home, 16-year-old Emily and her younger brother, Casey, were left alone. That night, without anyone's knowledge, a party took place at their house. In the morning, Natalie called and told him Emily had disappeared. Later, a shepherd found Emily's body 20 miles away from home, but by then, foxes had devoured her body so badly that even an autopsy couldn't reveal anything. Recalling all this caused Corey immense grief. His voice was trembling. Jane realized she had asked too much. The next morning, Ben took a few uniformed officers and headed with Jane toward Matt's station. Corey took a different route on a snowmobile, following the tracks. Jane briefed the new officers. Their job was to search Matt's trailer and look for any clue that could connect to Natalie's murder. Corey was told to radio in if he found anything. Corey kept advancing through the snow. He followed animal paw prints and reached the carcass of a dead animal. Meanwhile, at the station, the guards claimed they had been about to report Matt's disappearance themselves. They said Matt had been missing for 2 or 3 days because he'd had a fight with his girlfriend. Jane noticed that 2 of the guards appeared slightly injured. They made excuses, saying the work was extremely tough and the company didn't even provide helmets, so injuries happened all the time. The supervisor finally granted permission to search the trailer. Through his binoculars, Corey observed that the tracks he had been following passed directly by the trailer site where the other officers were investigating. While walking toward the trailer, one of the guards casually asked Jane whether Natalie had reported Matt's disappearance. Jane confirmed that yes, Natalie had been the one who informed them. At this, the guard immediately blurted out that they must have found Natalie's dead body. Hearing this, everyone became suspicious. If these men hadn't seen either Natalie or Matt in days, how would they know her body had been found? The news of Natalie's murder hadn't been made public yet. Only the death of an unnamed girl had been reported, without revealing the name. Ben's officers began taking positions around the area. The guards also immediately drew their weapons. A standoff was forming. Trying to control the situation, Jane declared that she was with the FBI. If they tried anything, they could hide anywhere in the country and still wouldn't escape. Meanwhile, Corey attempted to reach Ben on the radio, but got no response. He grabbed his rifle and ran toward the trailer on foot. Near the trailer, Jane learned that another guard named Pete was sleeping inside. He had been on the night shift. And this is where we're shown a flashback. That night, Natalie had shown up unannounced at Matt's trailer to surprise him. Matt was overjoyed to see her. They embraced and later lay on the bed, making plans about where they would eventually settle down. Just then, a noise came from outside. The other guards had returned. They were supposed to stay in town but had come back early. Natalie was changing clothes when Pete, who was intoxicated, spotted her and started being vulgar. Matt shoved him away and shut the curtain. A short while later, Pete came back and started fighting with Matt. Another guard hurled an insult at Natalie, so she slapped him. In a rage, Pete yanked at Natalie's clothing. Matt was filled with fury and lunged at him, but the rest of the guards attacked Matt too. They smashed a bottle over his head, knocking him unconscious. Then they grabbed Natalie and forced themselves on her. Poor Matt somehow managed to struggle back to his feet and tried to fight. During this chaos, Natalie broke free and ran. As she was rushing out the door, she turned back to look. Matt was surrounded on all sides. The moment she heard the sound of him being choked, she bolted toward the snow and kept running. Then we returned to the present day. Jane was still knocking on the trailer door. It was locked from inside. Curtis was standing outside acting as if he knew nothing. Suddenly, a shotgun blast came from inside, hitting Jane directly and sending her flying backward. After this sudden attack, the guards opened fire on the officers. While lying on the ground, Jane shot one guard multiple times in the legs and killed him. Suddenly, someone started firing a machine gun from inside, and Jane watched Ben get killed too. Curtis was still alive. He snatched Jane's weapon and was about to finish her off. But right then, a sniper round came from the distance, and Curtis dropped dead on the spot. It was Corey, who then took out the remaining 2 guards as well. Now only 2 people were left inside the trailer. 1 more was killed. Only Pete managed to escape. He had jumped out through a window. Jane fired at him from beneath the trailer, but he kept running toward the forest. Corey quickly reached Jane. He carried her inside and set her down on the trailer's couch. Jane asked for the radio, saying if a helicopter reached there in time, only then would she survive. Corey sent a message over the radio and then told her he was going after Pete, but he added, even if he catches him, he won't be bringing him back. Jane nodded in agreement. She knew exactly what Corey was going to do. Pete kept running through the snowy forest. He was exhausted. His breathing was rapid, yet he kept moving with his gun in hand. In desperation, trying to stay alive, Pete waved his pistol around in every direction. But at that moment, Corey was wearing a completely white suit. With snow all around, he was virtually invisible. Corey ambushed him suddenly and knocked him unconscious. When Pete came to, his body was inside a bag. His hands and feet were bound, and his face was smeared with blood. In a calm voice, Corey told him they were on the highest peak of the mountain. Pete said he wanted to talk. Corey sat down on a nearby tree stump, perfectly composed, and said, "Yes, that's exactly why I'm sitting here, to listen." Pete slowly wriggled himself into a sitting position. That's when his eyes fell on his bare feet. His shoes were gone. The sight terrified him. Corey watched him silently and said, "Start talking. You don't have much time left." Pete began speaking frantically. Yes, he had made a mistake. He had forced himself on that girl. He had killed Matt too. "Take me to jail," he begged. He was prepared to face his punishment. Corey responded, "Out here, there is no law. There's only me." After hearing Pete's confession, Corey pulled out his blade and cut the ropes binding Pete's hands and feet. He stated plainly, "If you can make it to the highway, you'll be a free man." That was the same chance Natalie got. That poor girl ran 6 miles barefoot through the snow trying to escape you monsters. "Now it's your turn, you dog." Pete still couldn't fully comprehend the situation. He still believed Corey would take him to jail. That's when Corey placed his rifle right next to Pete's ear and fired. The sound of the gunshot made Pete bolt like a madman. The terrain was working against him. There were mountains, slopes, and deep snow. He kept falling, crawling, stumbling forward on his hands, running exactly like an animal. Corey stood watching him from a distance. After a while, Pete's lungs gave out. He collapsed onto his back in the snow. He fought for air, struggled and writhed, and then slowly, agonizingly, he died. Corey didn't even need to fire a single bullet. Later, Corey visited Jane at the hospital. She was still alive. She looked a bit weak, but she was going to make a full recovery. Corey cracked a small joke, and she laughed. He had also brought her a stuffed toy. After that, Jane said emotionally that only one thought kept running through her mind. How did that poor girl run 6 miles barefoot? What she must have gone through in that freezing cold? To this, Corey replied simply, "The ones who made her run, I've made them run too." Later, Corey went to Natalie's father and told him the entire story. He also advised him not to distance himself so much from his son. The boy needed him right now. One can only hope that things will get better for these people from here on. So in your opinion, did Corey do the right thing by taking the law into his own hands, or was it wrong? Do let us know in the comments.